All right, Paulette, I'm so excited to have you on the Good Girl podcast. Folks know a little bit about you now, a little bit about your background. I'm excited about this topic. And so welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited, a little bit nervous to be here, but very much more excited though. Much more excited.
I know. I feel like this is going to be a really good conversation. One, because of your background, and so you have two journalists talking to one another who like to ask questions, who like to go deep, and with you being very transparent. And I also feel like we're cousins, and I say that because both of us got braids, both of us got glasses. And
We
we're
did not
both.
plan this.
We
Did we plan
didn't.
this? We didn't.
We didn't. So excited to have you. And so let's actually let's hop right into the conversation. I asked people off the back, and I want to be clear too. I did inbox Paulette because she wrote something on her Facebook status and it just grabbed my attention. I think it's a conversation we need to have and we need to be transparent about, especially with I think where the culture has been going. So I don't want to get too far into it. So Paulette, I'm just going to ask you, what is your confession?
Yeah, my confession is that I am a recovering alcoholic and I am 101 days sober today.
101 days sober. So when this airs, I don't know how far we're going to be in, and maybe 120 days, 130 days. But congratulations first. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And do you say congratulations? I don't know if you say
Yes,
congratulations.
you do.
Okay.
You say
Okay.
congratulations.
Okay. Look, a cheer here and a cheer there. So when people hear alcoholic, when they hear, I think they don't imagine someone that looks like you, someone that looks like me, someone that is professional, someone that has a job, someone that is continuing and handling their responsibilities. When you hear that word, what did you think prior to you accepting that this is me?
Yeah. So I think most people, when they hear alcoholic, you see somebody that stinks. Like, even if you Google it, you'll see like a homeless person, a disheveled man with like a horrible, like 5 o'clock shadow at the bar with like his head on the bar, shot glasses all around him. You imagine somebody who's not functioning, who's not going to work, who's literally just passed out all the time. And that is not the case.
Yeah, yeah. When did you realize in your journey that it was a problem before you took the step of admitting, before you took the step of even confessing? At what point did you realize it was a problem?
So I would like to start by just going back a little bit, or kind of a lot of it, because my relationship with alcohol actually goes back pretty far. For reference, I'm 35 years old now. I would say that I had my first drink probably when I was like 16, something like that, 15, 16. And this was just in situations hanging out with friends who had like the quote unquote like cool parents who would like buy us wine coolers or like Mike's Hard lemonades, um, under kind of like the idea that we were going to do it anyway. So they preferred that we did it in a safe, confined environment, and they're providing it to us. So we're drinking as teens, but we're drinking in a safer matter, I guess. And so 15, 16 kind of just weaved into 18 and going off to college, and now you're going to the club, right? And even if you're 18, like you still got older friends. There's people in the club that can buy you drinks, so you still have access to it. And then that led right into being like 21. Now you can buy alcohol as freely as you wish. But even then, it was still like more social for me, drinking on the weekends. This is something I'm doing like occasionally. I'm not at home drinking or anything like that, or like going to the store and even buying it. I would say like a switch kind of flipped around maybe me being like 24 or 25, where alcohol went from like a social thing to a coping mechanism.
Mm.
But even at that time, I it still wasn't something that I realized was a problem. Um, so I would think like maybe for like the next 5 years after that, so 25 to 30, I was just drinking and didn't even realize it was an issue still.
And so when you say a coping mechanism, right? We can use anything for a coping mechanism, but the thing that tickled your fancy was alcohol. Did something happen at that 25 mark? And I also, while I say that, I'm also thinking about something you shared about having anxiety, right? As a, little girl in 6th grade or as a little girl in elementary school. And so I wonder if either of those played into alcohol being your drug of choice. And I use drug loosely because, perfectionism could be our drug of choice, working could be our drug of choice, but whatever it is, it assists with us. It's like an avoidant behavior, right? It allows us to not take on fully or experience fully, whether it's some pain or something that happened. So that's why I also asked, did something happen at that point in your life?
Yeah, so around 24, 25, at that time, I was with my then husband. I had my second child by then. I think I was 24 when I had my second daughter. And yep, this is when like my anxiety really started to manifest. This was also around the time that I went to my doctor and was finally like, something is wrong. Like my kids would leave the house with, their dad, and I would be at home worried, like with wild scenarios, like what if they got into a crash with a semi truck and were burned alive, and like things that were completely implausible. I ended up going to my doctor, and that's when she diagnosed me. We also went over like my history from elementary school and everything. And so around that time, I was put on medication for my anxiety. I was put on Zoloft for that. And it
Quick
was just
question.
like,
I just want to interject. Just understanding the culture of Black people,
mhm.
and how we have historically engaged with mental health. And did you push back on the diagnosis of anxiety one, and also with a uh, prescription as the solution?
So I did not. Everyone around me did. My mom's like, don't let them put you on medication. My ex-husband was like, don't let them put you on medication. I've always been more open, and especially to like mental health. I've always once I was an adult, even though that wasn't my teaching through growing up, I was still like pro therapy because I grew up around people who went to therapy, and like I saw that it was beneficial. Um and I had done my own research, and I became versed in what I was going through. So I didn't push back because I knew that the things that I had felt emotion wise, as far as like my anxiety and everything, I knew that wasn't normal. So I was willing to listen to my doctor, and I was willing to try the medication. Worst thing that happened, I hate it and I'll just get off of it. My fear was like, I don't want to be like a zombie or whatever, because like that's kind of the idea that people have about medication, is that, yeah, you're not anxious because you don't feel anything. So I'm like, well, I'll just give it a try. If I don't like it, then I'll get off of it. But I did have to like just not listen to the people around me. I had to just choose myself in the situation.
Hmm. Hmm. And so can you pinpoint, so you said you had your second daughter, you were married, so was there a trigger? And the reason I'm asking this, because I am curious about at what point does the switch happen and you decide, and if there is a decision, that alcohol or that this thing will be my coping mechanism?
Yeah. So being married and having kids, like it's a lot. Um, and even having the husband and one kid was a lot, but maybe that switch, I don't know, something from 1 to 2 kids felt like you might as well have invited 7 kids into this house, because it just got so much harder. And that's when I was like, that's when I first started like drinking wine, because I never like went to the store and picked up some wine. But I think even around that time, and like you really see it now, but there was like it's like the mommy wine culture, where it's okay or even encouraged to have like a glass of wine to like take off the edge at the end of your day. Like, you did good, you parented, go ahead, have a glass of wine. And it did feel good. Like, I wasn't stressed out when I had that glass. Like, it really felt good to put the kids to bed and just have me a glass of wine. But the issue happens, and the thing with alcohol is that one glass of wine is not going to give you the same feeling if you're having it every night, because your tolerance is going to build up. So where one glass of wine used to satisfy you, now you need a couple glasses of wine. And in some cases, that 2 glasses turn into a bottle, and then somewhere along the way, that bottle turns into 2, and sometimes maybe 3. But so it kind of just, yeah, it just like this encouraged behavior that I saw, like, oh, this is okay. For me, it just kind of spiraled into something bigger and out of my hands. Like,
Yeah. And I know you said the mommy culture, but I think the culture in general has very much been open. But in this, I don't think this is anything new. I think social media definitely exaggerates or makes something exponentially bigger than it really is. It's like the person on the microphone or the person with the biggest mouth gets the most attention. And so there has definitely been, I think, an acceptance of having and a push of having alcohol wherever you go and it being acceptable, right? Mimosa's cool, but when you're brunching, you know, 4 times a week, you know, it just has become more acceptable. So at what point, when was Paulette, I'm making this up, sitting on her couch and she looked up and she realized she had gone through, say, 7 bottles in a day? Making this up, could be a complete lie. But what was the jarring factor that said, "Hey, I think I may need to chill," or "I realize I cannot stop or I cannot put this down"?
yeah, so it did get to a point for me where, I'm not gonna lie, I could really drink like 3 bottles of wine in a day, and even that didn't feel like enough. It's like I didn't have a stop. Like, okay, I'm gonna drink till I feel like this. I just wanted to drink and drink and drink. Like, I would be like passing out, to be honest. Um, but even that was not enough for me. Like, I still did that for years. Even that's wasn't a big enough problem for me. And I'm not talking like, I wasn't drinking like Stella Rosa 3%. I was drinking like Earl Stevens 13%. I was losing whole chunks of many days. And just doing like really destructive behaviors. Honestly, I have many times where I was putting myself in danger, my friends in danger, putting my kids at risk of losing me if, I had done something to harm someone's loved one. Cause not gonna lie, I would get behind my wheel. Like, it's like I just didn't care. And I just felt like I was fine, because when you're drunk, your brain is telling you you're okay. Like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I could drive. I could do this. I could do this. Um, and I feel like because nothing major happened, I never got a DUI. I never had a serious accident. I feel like I never, that's why I kept going, because I'm like, nothing is happening to stop me. So I'm just going to keep going and keep being more destructive, not realizing, because at this point, like around, even like the last year or two, I was spending literally most of my days drunk. I would drink, what was like drinking at 5 p.m. became drinking earlier in the day. Like, well, I don't have to wait till 5. I can drink at 3 if I want to. It became, drinking all throughout the day. It became finishing the glass of wine that was on my nightstand from the night before. Like, when I wake up, why am I polishing off this leftover warm wine at 8 a.m.? Like, why am I need to knock the edge off? I just woke up. What edge? There is no edge yet. But even that wasn't enough to like wake me up, even though I would wake up sick because
Mm.
I wasn't eating enough food during the day, but I was filling my stomach up with wine. Like, it got like so bad. But it wasn't until like last, I mean, even as recent as just like last November, like right before I decided to stop drinking, is kind of when I got like what for me was my rock bottom and my wake up call.
So what was that? What was that? Was that rock bottom? Was it just the multiple things that had happened that got you to your rock bottom? Was it like an epiphany? Like what was it?
No, so my rock bottom, just being like candid, even though I try to like pretend this just never even happened. I've been in a very like short-lived relationship last year, um, which ended in November. And on the day that that relationship was ending, it was an evening where that person was packing up to move back to their home state. At the same time, I was like arguing with my teenage daughter about her going to a basketball game with some friends. And I'm like, no, you can't go. And, teenagers, they're going to push back. So I'm frustrated by that while he's packing his stuff to get in the Uber to go to the Greyhound station. I have been drinking, which, with me, it's kind of like a Russian roulette of like what kind of person you're gonna get once I get drunk. You might get the giggly, ha goofy person, or you might get like the angry, aggressive person. On this day, the angry, aggressive person showed up from drinking. And it was just like everything going on around me combined with the fact that I was drunk just like bubbled into this situation where I actually ended up getting into a physical altercation with my daughter. And that was hard for me because I didn't have the best relationship with my mom. And me and her have gotten into physical things. And sorry, I knew I was going to cry. Me and her have gotten into physical altercations. And it was like, in that moment, I had become everything that I didn't want to be with my own child. Because I know, I am so sorry.
Don't
Because I know how
apologize.
much that impacted me and how I see myself in my life. And it was like in that moment, I was her and I was doing it to my own child. I got into a fight with my kid and it wasn't even about the relationship anymore. Like that guy can go. But this was like, what am I doing? Like who even is this? Who am I? Like my kid's gonna be in therapy later in life talking about when her mom, like her and her mom got into like a fist fight and her mom was drunk because she wanted to go to a basketball game. And so like at the same time that was happening, so he was leaving. My ex-husband was here to pick up the child that we have together because it was a Friday. So he was coming to get her for his weekend. And like he came in the middle of all this happening. He's coming in. So he ended up taking our child, obviously, for his weekend. He took my daughter to his parents' house. The guy had left me. And so it just was me by myself. In the house with my world just like falling apart around me. And I'm just like there. I mean, that'll sober you up real quick. Let me tell you, any alcohol that was in my system, that sobered me up real fast. And it was just like, I didn't have anybody else there in that moment, just me and like my thoughts. And I'm just like, Paulette, what on earth are you doing? Like, what on earth are you doing? And for me, like, that was enough for me to be like, that's enough. Like,
Yeah.
that's enough. Like, you can hurt yourself all day, but like once I'm impacting my children, which I mean, the entire thing, of course, has been impacting my children. It's just when you're drunk, you can't see how it's impacting everybody else around you. So I was already impacting my kids, but it was just like, that was just like, I was like, no, I can't do this anymore.
It's interesting when you think about and when you share your rock bottom that it took something outside of you for you to recognize that this isn't healthy for me. I think we see that a lot with women. And I don't know if that is an indication of how we are indoctrinated or taught or even socialized to love ourselves, right? Um, because we very much take care of everything and everybody outside of us. And so that was something that piqued my interest as you were sharing. And so when you're in that space by yourself, um, I'm gonna say sitting on the floor and your whole world has gone away basically in that moment. What do you tell yourself? What do you say? Do you try to cope again or do you say it's time for me to get some help? Do you immediately pick up the phone and say I got to call, Alcoholics Anonymous? Do you say I am an alcoholic? What were you thinking as you're sitting there?
So it's honestly, the evening is kind of a blur. I don't even remember. I know I didn't go get any more wine, but at this point, I can't even remember if there was any more alcohol left in the house. I don't even remember like going to bed or anything. It was just like everything just felt so dark. I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on. I will say the change was not like immediate, but those days following were just like a lot of like crying. And I remember, everybody was really worried about the relationship between me and my daughter and like how that was going to play out. So, people were coming over to check and how's she doing? How are you doing? And I just remember being in the kitchen a couple days later with my auntie. I love her. She's like the one person in my life who I feel like I can really just like let down my guard and my walls with. And I just remember being in the kitchen with her, and I was buzzed a couple days later because I was so sad. And I just remember crying to her, like, and telling her like my life is falling apart. And she's like, no, your life is not, said something along the lines of like, your life isn't falling apart. Your life isn't falling apart. You just gotta like get some things together. She never said specifically, you got to put down that bottle. Because I know everyone around me was, observing like, Paulette's got a drinking problem, but nobody's ever said like, Paulette, you got a drinking problem. You should put the bottle down.
I was wondering that was a part of my question too. Like I was wondering like if your family, if your friends, if people who observe these things ever said anything to you, or were they even trying to prompt you to see it? Did they see it? Did they question it?
I think with my friends, we kind of lived the same kind of lifestyle. And with them, like I told you, it was like Russian roulette of like what my personality would be like when I was drunk. So with my friends, they really did more so just get like the playful turn up, Paulette, but they were also turning up. So they probably, they can't see that. They're just like, oh, you don't have a problem. But they also only saw what I showed them. Like they didn't see me at home, like drinking in the excess that I was drinking in at home, because you're going to let people see what you want to see. My family, yeah, they probably did see me with a cup more often than not, but still nobody ever was like, hey, Paulette, you drink too much. I will say my mom probably would say it once in a while, but that's because my dad was an alcoholic. So she just didn't want, she was more so afraid that because my dad was an alcoholic, that is how my life would end up too. So she would say things like, you don't want to drink too much, but nobody's ever like, you know what, Paulette, cut the shit. You need to stop drinking. I didn't get that from anybody. I kind of had to just come to that point myself.
So get me to you sitting in a room full of strangers saying, "Hi, my name is Paulette and I'm an alcoholic." I'm not saying that happened, but I think that's what we think happens when you come to that conclusion.
Yeah. So I have not gone to AA. I guess, some people do feel like they need to do that. I mean, I guess some people just don't. For me, it was like this. So my rock bottom came at like mid to late November. Um, and then I would just set a date for myself. I said, okay, I'm going to allow myself to drink for these few more days. And then December 1st, you're not going to drink anymore. And I didn't know if I could do it because there have been times like I would, like I said, I would drink myself to the point of being sick. And you would think that would be like, oh, don't drink that next day. But I couldn't even, it was a lot of times where I struggled to even be able to go 24 hours. And if I did, it was because I was so sick that I couldn't drink anymore. So I've kind of just done it cold turkey. I haven't sat in a formal meeting, but I do use, an app on my phone that like tracks my sobriety and has like a community component where you can go in and like talk to people who are hitting the same milestones as you and like a board kind of format. I also do utilize like support groups on Facebook or, like Sober Girls Society and stuff like that, to like communicate with people that way. Cause again, like, I think I would be making myself just more anxious because of my anxiety if I tried to sit in a room full of strangers and stand up and be like, hey, I'm Paulette, I'm alcoholic. So I kind of just say that in the support groups or like on my own Facebook statuses or my own Instagram and just kind of do it that way.
Was it hard for you to share that with your community? Because again, that's how I found out with you posting that on Facebook.
Yes. It was hard because it's kind of an embarrassing thing to say, like, I'm an alcoholic. And I don't think I really looked at myself as an alcoholic initially because to me, because I think it's because it was wine, honestly. To me, an alcoholic, like, I'm not knocking back fifths of vodka. Like, how can I be an alcoholic? I'm drinking wine. This is like high class, and that's not the case. You can be an alcoholic with wine too. But to me, like, so that's why I fell into, I was blinded by the stereotype. Like, this is what an alcoholic looks like. This is what an alcoholic drinks. And that's not the case. I was an alcoholic because I could not stop myself from drinking. I was dependent on alcohol to get through a day, like to get through my day.
And it's interesting. So when we started this conversation, you were talking about how you picked it up as a coping mechanism. And as you are taking me through your journey, it sounds like whatever you were using alcohol to cope with kind of went out the door. Is that a true statement?
You mean as far as like now that I've stopped?
More so that it wasn't a priority. Like you weren't thinking about that thing that you were trying to use.
Yeah. Absolutely. When I drank, I wasn't anxious. When I drank, I wasn't depressed. But the thing is, you really are all of these things still. You just can't feel it in the moment. But the problem, I wasn't stressed, right? Because I'm like over here floating. Like, but all of the things that are making you anxious, that are making you depressed, that are making you stressed out, they're still there. You're just ignoring them because you're altering your reality for a little bit. And honestly, you're making them worse because you're ignoring them.
So what has happened since you've sobered up? You talk about altering your reality. I think facing some truths about ourselves this is what we do here on the Good Girl podcast can be hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. So what has happened since you've sobered up?
So I will say the paramount is just feeling better. Getting past those first 5 days honestly was enough to make me want to drink again.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because you're dependent on a substance. Your body is dependent on that. So when I stopped drinking wine, I did have withdrawals. There were about 3 to 4 days where I had night sweats, I had shakes, I had tense muscles. It wasn't as simple as just putting down the bottle. And in the past, when I had tried to like cut back or moderate, and I would go through those withdrawal symptoms, I would just drink again because they would go away. You're shaking, you drink, and now you're not shaking anymore. Um, your muscles aren't tense, you're not sweating. But I had to push through those things because I knew that I didn't want to drink anymore. So yeah, those first 5 days were tough. Um, Probably the toughest.
So, what have you learned about yourself now that you do not have alcohol to, I'll say, mute reality?
I have done a lot of examination. I was really self-destructive, and a lot of things that I was blaming on other people were really my fault. I know I have not had the best love life, and a lot of my choices, like, but it's because I was ignoring my abandonment trauma, and just like I was just like seeking for somebody to love me, somebody to come fix me. And now I'm drunk and I'm seeking that. So I'm ignoring doing the work. Like, so I'm just going to continue to seek out those things and those people to fill those voids and fix those cracks. And alcohol is allowing me to ignore doing the work to fix those things for myself. I needed to love myself. I needed to examine the root of why I was drinking instead of just covering it up with drinking. So I feel more mentally clear. I'm less focused on trying to find a relationship that's going to fulfill me. And I found so much happiness like in me, like, because I didn't really like the person that I was when I was drinking. This sober me, I like me so much more. Like, I just find so much satisfaction. Like, I actually feel like I'm beginning to be happy instead of this pretend happy that alcohol allowed me to create. My relationship with my kids is better. I didn't realize how much it was impacting them until I could see how much happier my daughter is without me drinking. Her mom doesn't have, a cup in her hand all the time. And, this really is water. Like it, and I could see the way it's changing them. So that's also been really important to me.
Did your kids ever say anything to you? And I say that because you made a distinction between, your friends and your family really not being out with you, but your children are home with you all the time for the most part, right? When they come home from school, when you pick them up from school, when you're doing weekend activities. Did they ever say anything to you?
They never said anything, but I'm very sure that they were very aware what's going on when they see mom passed out on the couch and the glass is on the table. But no, they never said anything. Um, but I will say that my oldest daughter, once I stopped, you could see her, being able to open up more. And just, you can tell when your kids feel safer, when they feel more secure because you're around them every day. So you can see the change in just the way they feel like, okay, my mom's not drinking all the time. Okay, I can invite her to come to, my basketball game because I know she's not going to walk in here smelling like, Merlot or, slurring. And, so you can definitely tell that, they know what's going on. So
What's the biggest lesson you've learned from this as you're more than 100 days in sober?
wow, I don't know. So many, I don't know. How would I kind of just sum up what I've learned? I don't know. I guess really take care of yourself. It's like so much of my focus was to try to just keep going with life as normal, to make sure that everybody around me was taken care of and all the wheels were turning correctly and, everything's moving as it's supposed to, while I was falling apart inside, even though, I'm still able to go to work, I'm still parenting, I'm still cooking dinner, I'm still doing all of these things. But internally, I was literally destroying myself. So everybody's taken care of, but what good is that going to be when I'm gone, because I haven't done the work to take care of myself. So, yeah. I wish I would have taken care of myself sooner.
Yeah. Well, Paulette, I want to thank you for your transparency. I want to thank you for opening up. I want to thank you for simply sharing your story and all that comes with it, the layers, the duplicity, the duality of you being you. And so I sincerely appreciate you coming on the Good Girl podcast. And I'll ask one last question. And this is a part of the essence of the show. As you were going through this, did you think that you were a good person, like a good woman, a woman that was worthy?
I did not. I did not think I was a good person. I think that's why I allowed a lot of things that I allowed to happen to me. And not even to sound like I'm blaming people like, oh, you did this to me, or this man did this to me, because I allowed it to happen, because I felt like I kind of had to take whatever I could get, whatever crumbs people were offering me is all that I was worth receiving.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you shared that, because this, again, I just want to reiterate, this is why we do this. This is why we have those conversations, because so much of who we are, our identity, is caught up in this perception or this understanding of goodness and who deserves what. And I hope that your story, and I hope that if someone is listening and they're in the middle of this or they're at the beginning of this, that they know that regardless of what they do, of what they've been through, that they are worthy and that they are good. Yes, we make choices, and we make not good choices. We make bad choices, but inherently, we are worthy and we are worth it. And so again, Paulette, I thank you. I appreciate you. And I don't know how I can have your back, but I got your back, girl.
Thank you, girl. Thank you, girl. Yes. And I don't know. I just want to tell everybody, like, you're not alone. Like, whatever you're going through, trust me, there's somebody going through it too. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the Good Girl podcast.
Thank you.